wonderful opportunity for us. So we're going to find out about Zoe's workshop, and hopefully you'll have a chance to go and see her sometime. The pandemic has sort of held us up, but I know that we'll be able to do that soon. Anyway, she is also, or Zoe's is, Cave Paper is also featured in that lovely program that was on PBS recently called Bookmakers, and it was a beautiful program. And Cave Paper was the only paper maker that they featured at that particular program. So I'm happy to introduce Zoe, and I know you're going to enjoy what she has to say.
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Terry. And thank you for inviting me here. I'm really happy to be connecting with some more Tucson artists. And it's really exciting to see what you all have been working on. So thank you all for sharing. I'm going to get my slideshow up here. I'm the owner and operator of Cave Paper, a production studio here in Tucson for handmade paper. We specialize in large sheets of strong flax paper, which we then treat with a variety of surface treatments. It's particularly well suited to use with book arts and letterpress in particular, but all sorts of artists and designers use our paper, and it's always really wonderful to see kind of how it goes out into the world and what people do with it after it leaves the studio. I have been running Cave Paper for not quite a full year. I think our official anniversary is July 1st. But Cave Paper has been around for over 25 years now and was originally founded by Amanda Degener and Bridget O'Malley in Minneapolis. So maybe some of you have worked with Cave Paper already, but we just moved the studio here back in July. So here you can see a few of our little sampling of some of our sheets. This is Amanda and Bridget on the left here, and another photo of Amanda that was featured in Hand Paper Making magazine, which she also co-founded with Michael Durgan. So today I just want to give you kind of a brief history of Cave Paper, tell you a bit about my own background, and I'm most excited to give you a virtual tour of the studio here and go into some more detail into our production. In 1994, Amanda and Bridget founded the studio, and they had been amassing equipment and really honing their skills for years before that. Much of Cave Paper's production methods are based on their studies with Timothy Barrett. And as I said, I'll go into our production methods a bit more later on, but if you want to dig even deeper into it, I highly recommend his book, European Hand Paper Making. I have it here, I don't know if you can see. It's a great resource. He really goes into a little bit of history of European paper making, but also just provides really excellent instruction and a variety of techniques, including kind of the techniques that we use here at Cave Paper. So they really based a lot of their production methods around their studies with him. We do a lot of work with small presses and book artists who are releasing kind of larger editions. I personally got into paper making a little bit when I was in college, but didn't really go into the kind of technical understanding of it until just the last few years. But to tell you a bit more about myself, I was born here in Tucson. We moved away when I was about 2, so I mostly grew up in Brattleboro, Vermont. But my parents have really deep roots here. My dad grew up in Tucson and co-founded the Tucson Weekly. And my mom studied here with Barbara Mettler, was part of her dance company, and continues to teach through the Mettler Foundation in Tucson twice a year. So I really grew up coming out here to visit and always felt pretty connected to Tucson. I went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, where I studied fine art and creative writing. And towards the end of my time there is when I started kind of experimenting with paper pulp and paper making in a truly just experimental way. As I said, I really didn't get into the more technical ways of making paper until much more recently. But these were just some of my really early experiments with paper pulp. I made these sheets in a kiddie pool with a blender and had been kind of picking up bags of shredded paper outside offices and just really playing with the material. I think what really drew me to it was a desire to really collaborate more with the medium itself instead of compromising for my materials. I really wanted my material to reflect the concepts I was working on, and so that's how my experimentation with paper pulp began. I really enjoyed also how dynamic it is as a material. These are sheets that I made with a window screen, but I was also using it in a more dimensional way, applying paper pulp to, a framework that I had built. So that was kind of my first foray into it, and I really didn't dive much more into paper making at the time. I do kind of wonder if I had met paper people at that point, kind of where my path would have taken me from there. But as it was, after I graduated, I moved to Maine, where I was farming for many years. I co-managed a small organic vegetable operation with a great friend of mine. From there, I moved to Colorado for a year to help my grandparents, and then in 2017 moved back here to Tucson, and was really ready to kind of recenter my creative work in my life in a way that I hadn't been able to up to that point. So I met Amanda through my dad. He actually met her at a conference, and I had been experimenting with sewing with my sewing machine with paper, and he texted me a photo of Amanda. I tried to see if I still had it, but I couldn't find it. But she was wearing a vest that she had made out of her persimmon paper. So he was like, you need to connect with this person. And so we started talking. She had really been trying to retire from cave paper for several years at that point and had many different things that fell through. And I was really in a place where I wanted to work in a creative field, and instead of trying to work other part-time jobs and then make time for my art, I was having a really hard time striking that balance. So I connected with her and was really excited about her work, and went to visit her in Minneapolis and got the tour of her many studios. At the time, Cave Paper was really spread out in 3 different buildings. She had even moved a lot of the production into her own home and garage, really trying to make it all work. And one thing she said that I really connected with was that she had really wanted to create a production studio as a way to always have her hands in the work, even if she wasn't making her own personal artwork every day. Making the jump from her production work to her own personal work is a lot easier to do than making the jump from, you know, a completely unrelated field. So that really resonated with me. And we started talking about how to make it a feasible plan for me to purchase the business over time. And I also was able to receive some assistance with startup costs. And we spent about a year working out all the details. And during that time, I was really focusing on kind of learning all the surface treatments. I also was able to visit a number of really wonderful paper studios. Part of the last in-person North American Hand Paper Makers Association meeting was a great field trip to New York. So I got to visit Pace Paper Studios, Dieudonné, and Carriage House Paper. I also was able to spend some time at the Morgan Conservatory in Cleveland, and also tour the studio at ASU here that John Rousseau used to teach paper making there, and now Heather Green is in charge of that department. So I really was just trying to gather as much information and really dive into it in kind of a short period of time. So yeah, I was practicing these surface treatments, and then let's see, we found our space. I'm in a building that's a wonderful old building just off of 4th Avenue. We're right next to the Antigone Books parking lot. The space used to be a pinball arcade, and now we've built it out as a paper studio. So there was quite a build out to do. And of course, everything was complicated and slowed down and just made extra challenging by COVID. So the move took a little longer. But we were still working in the space as it was kind of being built up. My dad actually went up to Minneapolis to drive the big truck with all the equipment down from Minneapolis. I went out to Santa Barbara to pick up some really wonderful equipment that was donated by Jill Littlewood, who's a wonderful artist and super generous. And then Amanda actually came down here to Tucson for about a month, so we could finish our training on the equipment here as we were getting set up. This is just a quick video to show you how we were trying to still be able to use the space even as the build out was going on. So here's some paper that's received one dip in the indigo vat. And you can see the pinball arcade murals are still up in the background. Everything's kind of balanced on trash cans and ladders, whatever we could use at the time. So it was a really busy month of Amanda being here. It was really crucial, and I don't think she quite knew what she was signing up for coming here in the middle of summer, but it was wonderful that she was able to. This is the big beater being moved into the studio. The beater weighs about a ton, and I think it's somehow moved across the country multiple times at this point. So that was an all-day project, getting that moved into the space. And here it is in the studio before we built a room around it, which is our kind of soundproof beater room. This is my dog for scale underneath. So the big beater, these two photos, the left and the center, show you the large beater. And then we also have a smaller beater here. But the big beater, I think, is about 90 years old. So it has passed through many hands at this point. And I think it will probably outlive us all. It is a Valley beater made in Appleton, Wisconsin. It processes 20 pounds of dry fiber. So you can see here, there's like a rinse wheel on the left in addition to the roller. And the rinse wheel is really crucial for processing flax because flax is just naturally pretty oily and dark. It needs to be rinsed quite a bit as it's being processed. In the middle photo, you can see how we adjust the bed plate. So the roller and the bed plate work together to kind of chop and also pull apart the fibers as they cycle through the tank. And this arm that comes off of the bottom here has more and more weight added to it throughout the beating process. And so the space between the bed plate and the roller becomes much smaller throughout that process. So you get a finer chop. So we also have this really beautiful smaller beater that was part of the equipment that was donated by Joe Littlewood. And this is a Reina beater. And it processes about 1.5 pounds of dry fiber. So it's really great for tests and just smaller batches. I have a video here of the big beater in action so you can get a sense. So here you can see the rinse wheel in action. We have a hose that's pumping water into it at the same time. And then underneath that brass cover is where the roller is spinning. One thing that's been really important to me also is really monitoring our water usage. We use a lot of water, and so finding ways to reuse it and repurpose it has been really important to me. Right now, most of our gray water we're saving and then bringing home to water the garden with. And my hope is that eventually we can set up a larger tank system here and maybe reuse more of the water in the paper making process. This is our sheet forming station. So we have 2 vats. We have 2 sizes of sheets that we specialize in our regular catalog, 17 by 22 and 21 by 28 inches, both those. So this is where we sheet form. Oh, I think I'm missing, sorry, I'm gonna go back one moment. Oh, I have a slide somewhere that shows flax, our Belgian flax before and after it goes through the beater, but it looks like it's not in here. So after the pulp is beaten, after the fiber is beaten, this is where we sheet form. Oops, oh, there it is. And then towards the front of the studio, we have kind of dry storage for our base sheets. These are all sheets of flax paper that we then will apply different dyes and treatments to. And our marble racks here. So here is unprocessed Belgian flax on the left. So that gets soaked overnight before it's beaten. And on the right, we have our processed flax after it's been rinsed and beaten. It spends about 3 or 4 hours in the beater, is like one full cycle. And then I have a video here of our sheet forming process that I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit. I wish I could sheet form this quickly. So this is the 17 by 22 inch mold. The mold actually is a couple inches larger in dimension, but because the paper shrinks up quite a bit when it dries, our final dimensions are closer to 17 by 22. So here I'm adding some more pulp to my vat. Behind me is my post, which is a stack of felts layered with the wet sheets. So you remove the decal and transfer the wet sheet to the felt, which is a process called couching. And then just repeat that process as many times as you can. Our hydraulic press is also a Reina press, which also came from Jill Littlewood's studio. So here I am layering one more felt on top of my wet sheet, spraying it down, and then couching that sheet as well. So after we build our post, we press the whole post in the hydraulic press. After it comes out of the press, the next step is to, again, I'm going to speed this up. Oops. Oh, excuse me. Here we go. The next step is to assemble our spurs. So we dry our sheets in spurs of 4 or 5, and then hang the spurs to dry. And that drying technique is part of what makes cave paper so uniquely strong. If you were, wanting to create a sheet that was better suited to like screen printing or something where you want it to be super smooth and the fibers be more open, you might restraint dry the sheets. But we air dry our sheets so that the fibers are able to fully shrink, and it creates a very strong paper. So here I am just trying to carefully assemble a spur by laying several sheets on top of each other. This is also a good chance to see if there are any little accidental inclusions that made their way into the sheets. This step, honestly, I think is the hardest part of the whole process. So you really want to line them up as closely as you can. You really don't want to have any edges sticking off or any wrinkles in the sheet. So this video is probably pretty long, but after we assemble our spurs, they get pressed again in the hydraulic press at a lower pressure, and then we hang them to dry. So I think we kind of get the idea. Here are some fresh freshly pressed spurs that are hanging in the marble racks. And you can see here how the texture changes as they dry. On the left, there are 4 wet spurs hanging, and then right next to some dry spurs that have been hanging probably for a couple of days at that point. So the fibers really contract quite a bit, and flax in particular shrinks up quite a bit more than other fibers. So it really creates a very strong sheet. And then once the spurs are completely dry, we pull those sheets apart. And that gives us our base sheet that we then do a variety of different surface treatments to, which I will walk through some of those now. We use a few different natural dyes. Indigo, walnut, and persimmon are the 3 natural dyes that are featured pretty prominently in the Cave Paper catalog. We also work with some synthetic pigments as well, but I really love the effects that you can get just combining the natural dyes in different ways. So on the left, the Indigo Night is a sheet that gets several dips of indigo, and then walnut dye is applied over the surface of the entire sheet. On the right, you can see different different effects that can be achieved by layering indigo in different strengths. This sheet on the left is a black that we achieve by dipping the paper first, sometimes up to 4 times in the indigo vat, and then applying the same number of layers of walnut dye over that. So it can be dyed up to 8 times to get that depth of color. On the right, you can see that is just a plain and simple walnut dye. The indigo does get dipped in a vat, and then most of the other surface treatments we do are applied with rollers or brushes. And they usually get multiple layers of dye. On the left is the persimmon, which we use a fermented persimmon dye that is then freeze dried. So we have to reconstitute it. But persimmon is naturally water resistant, so the persimmon sheets don't end up receiving any further treatment beyond their dyeing. Most of our other sheets will receive an external sizing at the very end, which prevents color from transferring, and it strengthens the sheet. And but the persimmon is kind of acts as its own sizing. This sheet on the right is one of our crackle designs, which is achieved by first sizing the base sheet. So I applied 2 layers of gelatin sizing to the base sheet and let it cure. And then the sheet is crumpled and submerged in a dye bath. And so in our regular catalog, we do this bright purple, the charnel house crackle. We also do one with walnut, the O'Malley crackle, but it can really be customized in kind of any color. This is our Starry Night paper, which receives, again, multiple dips in the indigo vat, and then is sprinkled with mica. So we apply 1 layer of gelatin sizing, sprinkle the mica on, let that dry, and then another layer of sizing to kind of seal it all in. We do have a couple of sheets in the catalog that are cotton based. Cloudy Sky is one of those. Also our alphabet and snow papers are also cotton. The Cloudy Sky, we actually start with a pigmented pulp as the base sheet. So we actually use both vats at once for the sheet. In one vat, we have our blue pulp, where we will form the base sheet, cooch it onto the felt, and then in the other vat, we will have another mold going where we create these kind of clouds in the vat and then double cooch on top of the blue base sheet. And our cotton sheets are not externally sized, they do have internal sizing. And they're dried the same way as our flax sheets. Here you can see the spurs of cloudy sky hanging in the marble racks. The final step is flattening the sheets, which we do in the stack dryers. We reintroduce moisture into the finished sheets and then layer them between blotters and cardboard with weight on top and forced air moving through to flatten the sheets. And that process takes 3 or 4 days. Most recently, we've been experimenting with using this larger mold that creates a sheet that is 30 by 40 inches. This is my super wonderful intern, Eliza, here helping me experiment with the larger mold. Up until a few months ago, I was really trying to run the studio on my own. And so having her assistance has made it possible to start playing with this larger mold, which is really wonderful. So one method that we've tried is building this really large vat to sheet form in. Another method that we're trying is instead of using a vat, using this decal box that sits on top of the mold, pouring our pulp directly into the mold with quite a bit of formation aid as well to slow the drain of the water. And then we will shake the mold at this stage as the water is draining. So far that has been the more popular method. Here we are cooching a large sheet from that mold onto a felt. And this photo on the right just shows you the 17 by 22 sheet next to that large sheet for scale. So it's something that we haven't quite figured out how to work into everyday production, but we're really trying to fine tune that technique so that it's not so labor intensive to create these larger sheets. And yeah, here we are. This is my dog Ramona, my studio assistant. But yeah, I'm really grateful for you all for having me here. And obviously this past year with the pandemic going on, it's been challenging to open the studio up to people, but my goals for the studio, in addition to just our production setup, is to really work on the education component of the studio as well. And so I'm hopeful that we can start hosting some workshops here and have more tours come through and collaborate more with local artists. At the moment, I'm not really set up for traditional retail, but you're more than welcome to reach out and set up a time to stop by the studio. And I've been welcoming individuals and small, groups of maybe 2 people at a time to come by. Yeah, and I hope that I can meet you all in person at some point too. It would be wonderful. I think that's it for my presentation. So if we have time to open up for questions, is this a good time? Great.
Yes. So Zoe, that that was wonderful to hear from you and see your studio. I am amazed. I'm going to ask anybody in our audience if they'd like to unmute themselves and ask Zoe a question or comment, whatever.
I have one.
Oh, who is this?
Barbara.
Oh, Barbara. Okay, hi.
Hi. Am I on?
Should
Well,
I
yes,
stop
we can hear
sharing
you.
my screen?
My question is the humidity or lack thereof in Tucson and how you found that affect the whole process or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. Things definitely dry more quickly here, which so far hasn't been a big problem. I was a little worried that that final step of flattening the sheets would be affected by the lack of humidity and that they might actually dry too quickly. But so far, everything has worked out. Yeah, I think some different um, climate related notes. Our indigo vat actually does really well here because of the heat. I think in Minneapolis, they had to take extra care to keep it warm when they needed to use it, and sometimes even would wrap an electric blanket around it. So it's definitely happy here. So that's been a good thing for us.
Great. Somebody else? Carol? I think Carol Morgan had something to say. Carol, are you there?
I sure am. I so appreciate your information and the tour of the studio. I was a paper maker and studied under Tim Barrett in
Yay.
2003 and went up and met Amanda and Bridget and fell in love with cave paper. And what a hoot that you're here in Tucson. Can't believe it. And I just, my heart just opened when I saw all that wet pulp and your beaters and your setup. And so sometime within the next couple of days, I'd like to talk to you personally, but
Yes.
I am thrilled beyond.
Thank you.
So welcome to Tucson.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be back here. And honestly, it's just an honor to be able to continue this business and be the next caretaker of the studio. I think, it's something that obviously a lot of people have put a lot of love and time into. And so to see it just disappear would have been really sad. So yeah, so I feel honored that I get to continue this work, and I'm excited to see how it can grow from here as well.
Wonderful tradition, and the quality of cave paper is, it's a beautiful product. Just
Thank you.
so thank you for being here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Kateri Neski. I'm a papermaker in Sierra Vista. I had the pleasure 20 years ago of spending 3 weeks in the basement of Cave Paper with Amanda and Bridget, working with them. So I was delighted to hear that you were here.
Oh,
And
good.
I want to come see you, and I'd love to see how we can support each other in papermaking here in the desert.
Yes. Yes, definitely. If anyone has any insights in water usage, I'd love to put our brains together on that one.
Yeah, that's a big concern. I find that the lack of humidity is fabulous in terms of drying paper, but
Yes.
the water use is a big concern. In fact, I was thinking about that beater and about the washer and wondering how you were managing that. But yeah, so I will be in touch, and I'm
Great.
welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
I don't know how to chat, but do you use this for printmaking or watercolor?
I think that it's really well suited to letterpress. I know a friend of mine has been using his Platen press to do some block printing with it with some success.
Is it heavily sized or lightly sized?
The flax sheets themselves has no internal sizing. It's all an external gelatin sizing. And
so can it be soaked? Because you need to soak the paper for intaglio. So,
That's a good question.
so is it water leaf or,
I can do water leaf sheets. Yeah, our base sheets on their own are water leaf.
I would assume it's okay for watercolor
Yeah,
for any surface printing too.
yeah.
Probably Intaglio might be a problem.
I think because the texture is pretty rough. Definitely with things like screen printing, I know it's a bit more challenging to use. It's really better suited to embossing and letterpress, I think.
Then it would work for Intaglio if you're doing embossing.
Great. Yeah, I to be honest, don't have much experience with Intaglio. So if it was something that you wanted to experiment with, I'd love to
Yeah,
hear how it works
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, I'll go online to your website and see.
Yeah, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Zoe. This
Hi.
is Suzanne Moore, and Amanda introduced us.
Yes. Hi, Suzanne.
And I just have to tell you, I met Amanda at a paper and book intensive about the time she was at your stage in your career. And watching you today, it just really moved me to think that you are this new generation. I applaud you. I'm
Oh,
so
thank
grateful
you.
you're here in Tucson.
Thank you. Amanda told me that she credits you as the person who inspired her to get into production papermaking. So
Yeah. Well, I brought everything she brought to that conference, and she said she went home and thought, oh, I can make a living with this.
yeah, it really opened a door for her.
Yeah, and just about every book that I make is bound in cave paper these days. So, yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you and Dawn are here in Tucson now too. It's great.
Yeah, us too. Congratulations. Your
Thank
presentation
you.
was fantastic. I've made paper with Katie McGregor in Maine, and I've seen other people talk about paper making, spent a lot of time with Catherine Clark at a artist in residence, but I've never seen it explained and pictured in such a wonderful way. So this presentation was really lovely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
Do
Thank
you use other natural dyes like onion or privet?
I haven't really begun to play with other natural dyes yet. It's something I'm really interested in learning more about. One thing that's wonderful about the walnut, indigo, and persimmon is that they're just naturally light and color fast. So they really aren't prone to fading at all over time.
I
I
was
think
going to
with-
ask you whether they were fugitive or not, because a lot
Yeah.
of vegetable dyes are.
Yeah, I think with a lot of dyes, you have to use a mordant, which I really don't know a whole lot about, but it seems, I'm not sure how paper holds up to that kind of treatment. Yeah, so I haven't played around with it very much yet.
Great. Zoe, could you stop your screen share? And then we can get back to just see
Yes.
you. There you are. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say or ask Zoe? I am looking at the comments here, and thanks so much. I'm just reading. Thanks so
let's
much
see
for
on
the
there.
presentation. Welcome to Tucson. So glad to have you here. Looks like Rebecca Gans visited you a couple days ago.
Yes.
Purchased some papers.
Yeah, it was great to meet you, Rebecca.
Yeah, and Rebecca's here. So yeah, definitely. Hopefully next year we can have, come and visit you
Yeah.
whenever.
Sure.
Yeah.
A tour. And
Yeah.
also it'd be fun if you brought your papers to a meeting, one of our
Oh, I
meetings
love
when we
that.
start meeting in person, it'd be
Yeah.
fun to see.
Yeah, seeing them in person is really a different experience. I think it's hard to convey just visually, all of the texture and the weight of them. So I'd love to be able to share them in person with you all.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Questions, comments? I love the one picture of you and your part assistant. You're stepping in the vat, right?
Yes, yeah.
You're in the vat of
It was
paper.
a full body experience.
That's great.
That is-
Bobby, I have a question.
Yes, Kathy?
Kathy Dannerbeck. You mentioned your catalog. Is that available online, and where can we purchase Cave Paper?
I am still working on like a physical catalog to provide for people. I have been offering 4-inch swatches. I think 5 for $15. So if there are specific papers that you'd like to sample, you can reach out and I can put those together for you.
Okay.
I am hoping to this summer, hopefully assemble a little sample pack of our catalog. But all of our paper is available on my website, cavepaper.com, in the shop. I also have a couple of wholesale clients, Hiromi Paper in Culver City, California, and Talus in Brooklyn. So they also carry our papers in person. Oh, my Zoom just disappeared. Here we go. I minimized it. Yeah, or if you also are nearby the studio at any point and want to pop in, I'm here most of the time. So just give me a call or send me a message and we can set up a time to meet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Hi, Zoe. This is Linda Kern. I'm sorry I don't have my image up. I'm
That's
unpresentable.
okay.
Just wanted to say welcome, welcome, welcome. And you now have 200 fans and supporters in the Tucson area through
Thank
Paperworks,
you.
because we all love paper and we love books, and we're very
Thank you.
excited to have you here. If you do not want 200 people streaming through your studio, come and see us. So if you can bring little snippets of the paper and set them on the table so we can look at them and touch them and know how to use them, we would be thrilled to have you in our midst.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for the invitation, and I really look forward to it.
Anybody else? I'm looking at that's a big space that you have, Zoe, and it looks
Yes.
like it's expensive to air condition it. I bet it gets pretty hot.
Yeah, we don't have an air conditioner. We do
Oh,
have a swamp
okay.
cooler. So
Okay.
I just turned that on yesterday for the first time this year, which is always exciting. Yeah, it is a really nice size space. I think it's about 1,200 square feet. And my dad actually has his office in here too. So we share a workspace, which is great. Sometimes he helps me load the press.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I also, behind me, I don't know if you can see, I have this really large mold actually leaning against the
Yes.
wall. That's a wallpaper mold that I haven't used yet. I know that Amanda and Bridget were making wallpaper for a while in Minneapolis and they knew someone who knew how to install it. So it's something I think would be fun to work on with a group. And so I'm looking forward to being able to bring some people into the studio to work on the large mold with. I think it would be a fun project.
That's wonderful. Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool.
It's quite tall.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was going to ask you, I'm sure you know of or have been to the Dard Hunter conferences.
Yes, so I was able to attend the last in-person conference, which was a wonderful chance to meet a lot of paper makers in the community. That was before I had officially taken over Cave Paper. So it was, I feel really grateful that I was able to attend that one before the pandemic hit.
Is that the one in Santa Fe?
No, it was in Philadelphia in 2019. Yeah. Yeah, and they're now, I think, technically the North American Hand Paper Makers Association. The name change happened the year I was there. So
yeah, I went to it when it was in Santa Fe with Helen Baribeau, and
nice.
was also a paper maker up here in Catalina. But just when you talk about large scale, there was one gal building the molds the size of like 8 by 10 feet, or, just huge.
Mhm.
And then
Hong
spraying
Hong, I think.
you
Yeah,
probably know her. Oh my gosh, the paper
her
was the
work is
size of the
beautiful.
room.
Yeah, really beautiful stuff.
Pretty amazing.
A lot of inspiring work happening in the paper making community, and a lot of experimentation and sharing of information, and real playfulness with the materials, which is all really exciting for me. So I'm really happy to be a part of the paper world.
Wonderful. Well, welcome.
Zoe, it's Linda Kern again. I have posted in the chat the name of a gentleman that is a local, I want to say celebrity, but that's not the right word. He's certainly campaigning for water harvesting and reuse of water. And if you would invite him to your studio, I'm sure he would have some suggestions for you.
That's a great idea. Brad Lancaster is actually a neighbor of mine and has been helping my parents figure out some rainwater collection in their yard. So I am hoping to connect with him about the studio. Thank you. He does really wonderful work.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, well, we're running on time, and Zoe, it was great to meet you and have
Thank
you
you.
our speaker. We'll record, this meeting has been recorded, and we'll get it up on our YouTube channel in the next several days. And you're wonderful. I think it's great. And we hope to see you at our meetings next fall, or see some of your work in person.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And it's been wonderful to connect with all of you, and really looking forward to connecting with you more in the future.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think that's it for our meeting today. And I hope to see you all May 13th for our last meeting of the season. We take a break over the summer. And I hope to introduce our scholarship winners May 13th. And also, we're going to do a slideshow of our 20 presentations. So get those entries in, and I'll see you all then. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.